In 1857, Edouard Leon Scott de Martinville, yes, a long name, he invented the phonautograph. This was the first device capable of recording sound, but it wasn't able to play the sound back. It was only designed just to show a visual representation of sound. At that time, listening to recorded sound, it wasn't thought to be possible until around the 1870s when Charles Cross, a French inventor, he came up with the idea for the paleophone, which would theoretically play back some of Scott's recordings, but it was just an idea on paper. He never actually made a working model. But months later, someone would, in fact, demonstrate playing back sound. This person would kick off the first of the four eras of sound recording, the acoustic era. It's hard to understand what's being said right now, but Thomas Mason, the man in the audio, he's saying a nursery rhyme, Mary Had a Little Lamb. This was recorded in 1878 using the phonograph. The man who invented the phonograph, Thomas Edison, he said to record something similar to this, reciting Mary Had a Little Lamb. But the original audio from 1877, it got lost during time. But enough of that. Let's actually talk about how they recorded sound. So the idea that Thomas Edison had was to record the vibrations of sound onto wax cylinders. To do this, the wax cylinders had to be rotated. So you rotate the wax cylinders using the hand crank on the side of the phonograph. And as the cylinder would rotate, there was a stylus or needle that would make grooves or make etches onto those cylinder as you spoke or just made any kind of noise into the horn of the phonograph. Thomas Edison wouldn't be the only one to use the idea of wax cylinders for sound recording. Alexander Graham Bell and Charles Tainter, they would develop the graphophone. And with the graphophone, which is essentially the same idea as the phonograph, they would use a different material of wax. Instead of using the soft wax that Thomas Edison was using, they used beeswax and some stearic acid, and it just resulted into somewhat of a better sound and longer recording. The wax cylinders were good, but it needed a change. So eventually, in 1887, Emil Berliner, he developed the gramophone. And the gramophone, instead of using wax cylinders, it would use flat disc, or what we know today as vinyl records. It still had the same idea of using the hand crank to rotate or the stylus to make etches, but with the flat disc, it made things a little more easier. Although things were a little more easier, the acoustic era still had its limitations. For instance, recordings often had low fidelity and volume. Basically, when recording, you can only capture such a low segment of the sound spectrum. So basically, if you were too far away, you might not get picked up, but if you were too close, you might overpower everything. So to combat this, musicians at the time, they would often use louder instruments like the trumpet, trombone, tuba, bass, so everything can't get picked up. At the time, performers had to be mindful where they were. Since it was only one take, everything had to be right. So the louder instruments, they would be more in the back, and the more quieter instruments, they would be close to the front. And the singer will often be in the front as well. There wasn't really a way of editing sound once recorded. So if it was only just one instrument for that 1 second that messed up everything, you had to start all over again, just to change one thing. But as time changes, things often change too. And in 1925, there was a big change.
When you hear a crazy bee, get up
In 1925, the electrical era marked a significant shift in the technology. Instead of using horns like in the acoustic era, now musicians used microphones. These microphones were a great improvement in the sound quality. They were sensitive to sound and was able to pick up more of the sound spectrum, or just more frequencies of sound. Now it'd be easier to control the highs and the lows. But the microphone wasn't the only thing that was introduced during this era. The next thing to be introduced was signal amplifiers. They were used to boosting the weak signals to create a more accurate sound. Now with electro microphones and amplifiers, it was more easier to have the voice and the instruments to be more easily heard together and have some kind of balance. The recording process also became a little more flexible. Now you can record individual parts separately and then bring them back together through a process called overdubbing. With overdubbing, it did make it more flexible, but it was still hard to pull off. Because even though they recorded with electric microphones, they still recorded onto the mechanical discs from the acoustic era. So the idea was if you made a mistake on one disc or you wanted to add something else, you would record it onto a second disc. And to do the overdubbing process, you use multiple turntables to play the different parts or the different takes, and then you record it onto a new master disc. And when accurate and done right, you will have one disc with both recordings on it. Because you had to be accurate, it was rarely done when recording music. It was mostly used for films and radio recordings. The electrical era was good. Now everyone was able to listen to music at home because record players were now easy to use. You didn't have to hand crank it to listen to your favorite songs. Now it did it by itself. But people behind the scenes were now working on a new recording process that used electromagnetic energy. 1945 starts the magnetic era. But let's go back a little bit. Let's do maybe 10 years. In 1935, the Germans invented the magnetophone, which is a recorder but using magnetic tape. And using it, they came up with a new technique called the AC biasing technique. This added even more range of the sound spectrum to get picked up when recording. The news wasn't made public until after World War II, and when it did, it impressed a lot of people. One of the key players being John T. Mullen. He worked hard to show off and promote this new audio quality. Everyone that he would show would be impressed by it. In 1947, he gave Bing Crosby a private demonstration of his magnetic tape recorders. Crosby saw the potential that it had, and he was happy to invest in Apex, the company that was developing tape recording technology. He became the first major music star to use tape for radio broadcasts and commercial recordings. Crosby realized that with this new technology, he would be able to pre-record his radio shows, and it would have the same quality as the live broadcast. The next development in his magnetic tape era would be multi-track recording. During this process, the tape will be divided into multiple tracks that are parallel to each other and will be perfectly synchronized. This would then develop into two-track recording, which resulted into a stereo sound. Now that it was multiple tracks, you can plug in multiple microphones and record them at the same time. Les Paul, a guitarist, composer, and technician, he would experiment with the tapes and the recorders, and eventually he would order his first custom-built 8-track recorder. This will help him even more at recording separate elements at the same time. This also helped him with the new technique of listening to tracks that was already recorded and then recording new parts alongside them. Using these new techniques, audio engineers were able to record, edit, and combine sounds in different ways that were basically impossible with disc and vinyl recordings. With this new technology, it didn't seem like anything could top it. But in 1975, that would change. So in the digital era, analog signals were converted into digital data. This will already have an advantage over the magnetic tape, because now with digital recording, there was a reducing noise and the distortion that often came with analog recordings. Also now it's easier to edit, copy, and manipulate without degrading the audio sound, compared to the tape where you had to physically slice and cut it. Another big change was being able to reproduce a consistent audio sound without the loss of quality that you would get reproducing analog tapes. This new form of reproducing audio would be the compact disc, or better known as CDs. CDs use a digital encoding format to store the audio, which provided a better sound quality and durability. This sound quality quickly became the new standard in recording sound, even though some critics still say the analog warmth that was associated with tape recordings is much better. Through time, the rise of the computer added a new level of sound recording. It would make it possible for musicians to record at home and still have the same high quality like in the studio. There will be new software applications that will allow you to record, edit, and produce audio all on your computer. These new softwares would be called Digital Audio Workstations, or DAWs for short. The popular DAWs would include Pro Tools, Logic Pro, Ableton Live, FL Studio, and others. Recording at home became more simpler now that audio equipment was easier to use and affordable. Now, all you really need is a microphone that either has a USB that you connect into your computer directly or an XLR cable that connects to an audio interface. And then our audio interface connects to either your computer or laptop. And essentially, that's how you can record at home. You can record your instruments the same way too. Either you directly record into the microphone or you connect your instrument into the audio interface. Even without the actual instrument, you can record digital instruments. These are called Virtual Studio Technology, or VSTs for short. Some of the popular ones include Omnisphere, Nexus, Serum, and many more. So let me show you an example of me recording to a digital audio workstation. I'll be using FL Studio.
Too long as I got me get back, little baby. Yeah, I think I've been stuck too long, I forgot where I'm at, little baby. I think I've been loved too long as I can't give it back, little baby. Try make it right, tell me I'm wrong. Try make it right, back to leave you alone. Only right way is your dole on my own. Push the big body, big way, money strong. I'm on the way, tell her we won't be long. I'm on the way, tell her we don't be long. I'm on the way, tell her we don't be. I'm on the way, tell her we don't be long. Fuck with the chat too long as I got me get back, little baby. Go. Fuck with the chat too long as I got me get back, little baby. Yeah, I think I've been stuck too long. Go. Fuck with the chat too long as I got me get back, little baby. Yeah, I think I've been stuck too long.
Recording has came a long way to the process of actually recording and how it sounds. I hope you enjoyed and learned something today. Thank you.
I think I've been loved too long as I can't give it back, little baby. Try make it right, tell me I'm wrong. Try make it right, back to leave you alone.